The Democratic leader.
Mr. President, this week, the American people will see for the first time what kind of Trump administration they're going to get in the coming years. One that will fight for working people, or one that will fight for the swamp. Over the next 4 days, over a dozen of the President-elect's nominees will testify in committee and make their case to the country. These hearings, in a very real way, are the opening salvo for holding the Trump administration accountable to the public. So today I want to talk a little bit about how Senate Democrats will approach these hearings to uphold our promise to stand up for America's working and middle class. These hearings will be the very first real opportunity to get the Trump administration on who they will fight for, working people or the special interests. Our approach will be this. We will use these hearings to show the contrast between Donald Trump's agenda of helping the special interests, especially the very wealthy, and the Democrats' agenda to fight for working Americans. Nominees should expect tough, candid, but fair questioning. They should come prepared to be honest about everything: their backgrounds, their experiences, and their commitment to increasing opportunity for all Americans, not just those at the top. They will also be asked tough questions about where they stand on the President-elect's stated policies on things that will hurt the middle class, such as tariffs, tax cuts for the wealthy, and undermining policies that lower drug prices. Now, if the President-elect's nominees demonstrate they are qualified and committed to lowering costs, increasing wages, and strengthening our security, Democrats will take that very seriously. But if the President-elect's nominees are going to push policies that make inflation worse and put more money in the pocket of special interests, or duck those important questions, they will be put on the record about their views for all the American people to see. That is why Democrats have insisted on regular order for the President-elect's nominees. A thorough nominations process ensures the American people know precisely who these nominees are and who they'll fight for. Unfortunately, a troubling pattern emerged last week from some Republican chairs who seemed eager to rush the nomination process without fully getting all the necessary documentation. Getting documents is not trivial busywork. These are financial disclosures, ethics agreements, and FBI background investigations. If these nominees have something to hide, these documents could show it. So it's important we don't rush to hearings without examining the record first. The more Senate Republicans try to rush the process without the proper documentation, the more Americans will ask themselves, what are Republicans and their nominees trying to hide? How can Americans trust, for example, that Donald Trump's cabinet will be free from conflicts of interest if Republicans hold hearings before anyone's getting a chance to review financial disclosures? How can Americans trust that these nominees will serve the public interest if we don't first examine all their ethics agreements? How can Americans trust that Senate Republicans will do what's best for the American people if they're more focused on keeping Donald Trump happy than examining every nominee carefully? If these nominees will push policies that make Americans' lives worse, Americans deserve to know it, and we can determine that with a complete, thorough, and exhaustive nomination process. On Mr. Hegseth, tomorrow's hearing with Pete Hegseth is a good example of why a thorough and tough nominations process is so important. Mr. Hegseth is Donald Trump's pick to be Secretary of Defense, arguably the most important position in the entire cabinet. If confirmed, Mr. Hegseth will oversee a workforce of over 3 million people and handle issues of life and death on a regular basis. His job will be to keep our troops safe and keep our country safe. If there's any cabinet position that ought to have a steady and drama-free individual, It is certainly Secretary of Defense. Unfortunately, Mr. Hegseth's background is deeply troubling, to put it generously. We all have read reports about his radical views, his alleged excessive drinking, the allegations about sexual assault, and his failures in the financial stewardship of multiple organizations. These are such serious allegations for such an important job. So why would the Armed Services Committee wish to rush through these hearings, particularly when the documents are not available to all the members of the committee, including the FBI background check? Mr. Hegseth will have an opportunity to answer questions about these allegations and about his record, as well as his views. He can expect his hearing to be tough but respectful, candid but fair. The stakes during tomorrow's hearings will be very high, not just for the nominee, but for the entire country. It's not hard to imagine an emergency situation where the Secretary of Defense has to make quick and steady decisions about our military. Is someone with Pete Hegseth's alleged history really the kind of person we want at the helm in a very, very important situation, dangerous situation like that? Is that really in the best interests of American safety? That's something senators should ask themselves during tomorrow's hearing. And of course, they should ask Mr. Hegseth questions about it. When it comes to a job like Secretary of Defense, there can be zero question, zero, that the nominee's up for the job. Unfortunately, Mr. Hegseth's record leaves too many unanswered questions. Let's hope we get real answers and real documentation before anyone votes for Mr. Hegseth for Secretary of Defense.